Hello. Thank you for joining us. I am Fuzka. I run a bunch of different things on this channel, but I am so excited to have my really good friend for a very, very long time, Maia Papaya, as I lovingly call her. She's here to talk with me about her system that she's coming up with. But before I put words in her mouth, I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi. But Fuz already said that I'm Maya, so I can't say that. That's redundant. I am the creator of the Ibellan Nights Sci-Fantasy tabletop role-playing system. I've been at it for like 6+ years. Started.
Don't get into details yet. I got the questions for those.
Oh God! All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't tell you, so you didn't know.
Well, I can say that for those that have already seen my face before, you already know that I've been like super active and like role playing in a lot of Fuz's games, as well as our other DM, Ninners. Royalty, Difficult Terrain. I play numerous characters across both. They are in 5e for the most part, and that has always been a blast. And doing so has made me an infinitely better, I guess, creator when it comes to coming out with all this new stuff.
I mean, you were pretty freaking amazing already, but we are always so happy to have you. And we're trying to make sure that everybody knows about this cool ass shit that you're making. So with all that in mind, I'm gonna start kind of hopping into some questions. If anyone has any questions in the chat, feel free to post, and of course we'll answer those as they come up. But we're gonna kind of start from the very, very top, which is what, in your own words, is Ibellan Nights?
In a word, a single word?
No, in your words.
Oh,
in a word.
Okay.
Good.
Try to keep brief. It is as I said before, sci-fi or sci-fantasy tabletop setting. And by sci-fantasy, I mean that it does have some magical, supernatural elements. A lot of freaky, weird stuff going on in the system. It spans several genres, and that's from like solar punk to cyberpunk to post-apocalyptica, and even some superheroism thrown in. And I have built the world from the ground up so that it's not just there to be there. It actually makes sense that it's there, and there's a reason for each of those elements to be there. And it's kind of a look at how it's I don't think anybody here is like strictly human in the Earth sense at this point. They've been exposed to so many different anomalies over time that they've just pretty much gone in different directions. And a lot of the origins, formerly known as races, I guess you could say, have all kind of sprouted from that exposure to all this like supernatural, paranormal, and atmospheric elemental stuff going on there.
Very cool. Already sounds dope as fuck. Maya and I have always been proponents of, if there's a human race to play, why would you play it? And that is not
for
to,
the skill points, obviously.
Right, for the feats and skill points, exactly. But yeah, not to shout out anybody who does love playing humans. Please enjoy. I just always loved colorful things. Yeah, I knew Joe was going to get on me for that. I just love the idea of playing something different. But in general, yeah, it's fun that you have this kind of look at it. Also, from someone who is not like super into sci-fi, and like I know vague, like most things I should say, I won't say vague. I do dabble in sci-fi, but not to the extent that you do, of course. So I just had a question right out the bat as of what you just said, which was, what exactly is solar punk?
Oh, okay. I think if you ask 10 people what solar punk is, you probably get like 8 different answers. But maybe 2 of them would agree. It's kind of toss up. But it's basically trying to embrace a altruistic and brighter outlook on the future. I mean, everybody's familiar with cyberpunk. It's dystopian and all this stuff like that. But solar punk usually revolves around people. Actually, their challenge is usually unsettling the remnants of terrible systems that ruin the environment and things like that, and trying to like bring the green back, or living within the green and like trying to find a balance between taking advantage of using technology and, sciencey stuff, in combination with actually living in harmony with the world instead of against it. And again, those challenges are usually revolving around pushing out the stuff that would try to dominate nature instead of coexist with it.
That is really cool.
Of the solar punk societies in my setting, they've already kind of achieved that balance, but at the same time, governments may be slightly authoritarian and have some flaws.
As expected, right?
Need to be addressed. Yes.
Hey, look, any system or civilization is never flawless because people gonna people. So, but that's really
biggest design principles there. Was just like there's a ton of different societies among all sorts of genres, but I wanted each of them to be flawed in some way, great in others, so that when the players do appear, there's actually something that can be addressed. Like I never want to build a perfect society because that gives nobody, like everybody's just going to be like, well, this place is perfect. I don't know.
This is utopia. Let's retire here.
Right. Right. Start.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I have my next question here for you, which I was actually very curious about, just like in general, because we've played tons of video games together. But before we even started kind of like yapping about, D&D and such, I didn't really know you to play really any TTRPGs. So what made you decide to make a whole TTRPG setting?
Well, going back, I didn't really play TTRPGs, but I was always kind of adjacent of them.
Right.
So way back in like 98, back in my day, I used to play Baldur's Gate. I was a huge fan of the original.
Let's go.
That was actually the series that pulled me away from Final Fantasy for a while until time. But that's a different story. So I got heavy into the Baldur's Gate series, Baldur's 2, Throwing the Ball, all that stuff. And while I was like initially into the modding portion of those forums and communities that sprouted up around it, they eventually led me to role-playing communities. And so I started role-playing on forums and things like that. And then that became adjacent to the tabletop stuff. So when folks on the forums were like, hey, this stuff is super freeform, but people are kind of being a little extra and like everybody's super human. So maybe we need to balance this out and use the tabletop rules a little bit. I was all for it. I was like, oh, okay, sure. I played these in video games. I kind of understand them. And so I was kind of tabletopping without even knowing that I was initially. And then eventually 3.5e dropped. And even though I wasn't doing tabletop per se, in the forums, that stuff was being incorporated wholesale. So I was getting super familiar and using character generators and Red Blade and all that stuff to like build characters and like roleplay with those stats and things in mind. And a lot of it was a source of inspiration. When Pathfinder dropped, I actually started buying a lot of the source books and things like that, campaign stuff. I have a ton of Pathfinder materials. Just because I'm super into the lore and a lot of the reflavorings they did for familiar tropes. And I like the way they did their gods. They separated their civilizations and things like that. Also because everybody was mad at 4E and I was one of those too. When I saw they did the lore, I was just like, nah.
Yeah.
Super out.
I'm gonna say no to that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, I hear you on that.
I mean, I'm sure you remember you kind of had to drag me kicking and screaming back to D&D.
I did. It's so interesting that you say back to, because in my mind, I was like, I didn't know that you had ever really been involved with it. I mean, obviously Baldur's Gate as a game, we talked about it when we were like, when we were first meeting as online friends. But I didn't know if you had ever participated in it, like, pen and paper kind of situation. And then...
Not pen and paper, just the forum stuff. But we delved so much into those settings, and especially into Planescape, that, it's just when you first pulled me back to 5e, and then I looked at their books, and I was just like, I don't see anything about Genasi. Or any of the mainstays I used to go to.
Yeah. I mean, something that I think the two of us really agree on, and we also kind of we kind of talked about this a little bit with the human thing or like the races thing, is like we tend to kind of dislike a lot of the status quo. So kind of like we both love fantasy, we both love sci-fi, but if it is kind of textbook in either, I think both of us get bored really fast. Which is another reason why I know your system's going to be so freaking creative, because like every time you're introduced to something, you're like, but we could make it better. So, you know, this is a good opportunity for you to kind of like flex those muscles and show how awesome and creative you are.
The part was weird for me. It's the disdain I had for like stereotypical fantasy wasn't exactly a thing I always had. It was more of a thing that was like when I started role playing was when the Lord of the Rings movies came out. So when I was on the forums, everybody just wanted to be Lord of the Rings characters over and over and over and over, and I got so fucking tired of it. It is so overdone to the point of like, I just wanted to do whatever I could to get away from that. And even now, I feel like some of that still holds. Where it's like, I don't actually hate Lord of the Rings. I just hate people who like can't stop being Lord of the Rings for 5 seconds. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, exactly. Like no hate to Lord of the Rings by any means. It's just some of the I guess hype surrounding it sometimes. Not even hype, just I don't know. Some people it just becomes like their whole world in life, and I have a very similar situation where it's like I like The Thing. It was a huge part of my freaking childhood, and I could never like erase that or forget it. But yeah, every now and then, that's not all I want to hear about, especially when something as creative as these worlds can be represented. And Spell Logic was saying, went to the Shire in New Zealand a week ago. That's awesome! Holy hell! Hope you liked it, and I'm sure you took a ton of pictures because I've heard that's beautiful. And good night, kid. Thanks for dropping by.
Thank you, kid. I think it's a case of just like overexposure. I'm the same way with like any type of music too. As much as I love a lot of music, if you overexpose me to any one artist, I'm just going to eventually be like, I don't care anymore. Please no.
Also, I realized Kit was asking a question, and I don't know if he's still here, but he was asking, why do you have long ass names?
Kit is trolling.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
It is one of the people that is a valued and treasured playtester of mine.
Yes.
And when we playtest a lot of the materials and workshop a lot of the names, he has a tendency to keep his peace when we're like, should we name it this? Should we go with this? And then after the name goes through without protests, he'll get at me later, like a month later, and be like, hey, why is his name so long? Bro, what? You had the opportunity. And it's because bless his heart, he's been doing a lot of stuff in Excel trying to like create like automated character sheets and things like that. And I don't even think it's the names are too long. I think it's too long for Excel to
I see.
When it flips out. Like,
yeah.
I'm just like, look, I don't know what to tell you. I appreciate what you're doing, but if you don't say anything when we're putting this stuff together, like it's just.
I think this is part of the fun of, kind of making it open as you are. And like, I know for the most part, a lot of your friends have been involved in sort of getting this together, but nothing ain't too long for Excel, Excel can handle it. But the idea that, you can have community members helping you and also giving you feedback is very helpful. But I'm going to go on for my my next question here. And that is, what do you hope to achieve with this setting? I know that's a super freaking loaded question. But I guess like more than anything, is it just kind of like a need to get this creativity out? Or is this just, something that you've always wanted to see and you just kind of wanted to fill that gap? Or is this a chance to be like, I will be different from everything else? Like, what do you, I guess, what is in a weird way, kind of a goal of yours in making this?
I think it's all the above. I've gone through stages with this. When it got its start with me being a sleepless person, who could not sleep because I had too many ideas buzzing around in here, and I just needed to get them out on paper. And then when I started typing them out and stuff like that, I was like, actually, that's kind of cool. Maybe I should. So I started refining it a little bit, and then after I refined it enough, I was just like started to show it off to a couple of friends and things like that. I was like, "Hey, you want to take a look at this? How's this sound? Does it sound stupid? No, it sounds great. All right." And so I kept making more and more and stuff, and little did I know I was making a whole setting over time. And eventually, I started, like role playing in that setting a little bit, like those initial versions of it on forums, and be like, "Hey, you guys want to try stuff out in the setting I made up? It's kind of interesting." And we all, yeah. But then eventually, same as with my old forum days. Yeah, people get superhuman and they don't have any limiters placed on them. Weird things happen. So I was like, all right, maybe I need some mechanics for this, or it's some loose rules, to keep things in place and like rein in people that like power game a lot. So I started like just very loose mechanics, just like, hey, these are some of the ways you can spec your character. Hey, these are some of the weapons you might find or something, just to give a better idea of the setting. And then
so you were like unintentionally building it.
For maybe like I would say at least 3 to 4 years, I was just unintentionally building a whole ass setting because it was fun. It was just a hobby. It was just like, there's nothing like this, so I might as well keep with it. It could be fun to share with other people. And then one of my close friends, dear Iris, one day took a look at my stuff and was just like, "Hey, this looks pretty professional." And I was just like, "What? What do you mean it looks?" Oh. And then light bulb. It's like, oh. So what you're saying is I could do the thing where you turn this into a tabletop setting and then share it with the world. Nice.
Let's go.
That's when I like got really serious on developing it and like actually instituting rules. And the funny thing about this, and I feel like I actually dodged a bullet with the LGL drama. When I first started with the idea of like, this probably does need to have some concrete rules. I'm going to do the tabletop thing. And I shopped around. I was just like, all right, let's take a look. Everybody uses 5e. If you put it on the 5e, everybody will get it.
Yeah.
And then I looked at 5e and I looked at my setting and I was like, nah, that's not.
This ain't gonna work.
Nah, nothing really matches what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah.
Even if I look at D20 Modern, I was like, so I jumped over to Fate, took a look at that. All right. Took a look at Cypher. Was kind of into it. But it was like, none of it's perfectly fitting, though. So I had to make my own. And here I am. With mechanics. And the cool thing is, when I really started getting serious about the mechanics, that was just around the same time I started doing the tabletop with you guys.
Yeah. I remember you talking about it because in a way it like, obviously the setting is hilariously different, but it was a way for you to kind of almost like test ideas and see where pain points in other, role-playing situations are and see what you wanted to avoid or see what you wanted to kind of, retool for other reasons and such. Yeah, I think it was interesting that when we found you and brought you to D&D again, was like, I think it was like really good timing in terms of kind of collecting your thoughts a little bit on that.
Yeah, I do apologize for having 3.5 e-brain. When you first brought me to 5e.
Nope.
Like,
do not worry.
Does it work like that anymore? How does it work?
That is fine. That is totally fine. I understand.
But the nice thing, how it works.
The nice thing was the way you answered that kind of answered my next question, which was how did you come up with the system? So that kind of came out from that answer there. So the next question I'm going to ask you is what unique challenges have you encountered so far? Or what's a unique challenge you foresee yourself encountering in the near future? Because Ibellan Nights is in very much a workshop phase. It's still very much being developed. There's a lot of things that you want to be doing in the future, which is obviously getting certain artwork for it, getting like seeing what kind of output you can work with, whether that's print or PDF or whatever. But what are some that you've encountered, or what's one that you see on the horizon?
Getting professionally done artwork. Although you did help with a lot of those banners and they look amazing.
Thank you.
Like character
I got
art,
your logos
landscape
on
art, I guess layout in the books when that happens. That's definitely something I'm looking forward to like tackling, because I do want this to look as polished as absolutely possible. I am a terrible perfectionist, and fools hates that about me. But here we are.
Look, listen, I love the idea that like you want to make things look good, and like in a way, I think in my past I would have called myself a perfectionist, but I just very much believe by the idea of like if you wait until it's perfect, something that is impossible to attain, nobody is ever going to see it. You know, and like I'm trying to make sure that everybody sees the brilliant shit you've been working on. And that's the reason why like anyone, especially in our close circle, kind of knows that I've been very much like dragging Maia into like getting the word out about this, and that's part of the reason why I'm, you know, making sure that we can talk about it here. You have no fucking I think I do a little bit at least. And that's part of the reason why I want to make sure. And I think just communities in general, and also in terms of like the TTRPG community, I don't think you understand how much people love giving feedback on stuff or even testing new systems. A lot of people are so happy to see their input taken, and obviously you've heard me say this many times before, but I think it's a really good time to be showing what you've been working on, even if it's, you know, even if it's not done, that's fine. But to get other people's hands on it and to get other ideas coming from other people, which is great. So I say 300 more revisions until 1.0.
I don't understand why you gotta come for my neck like that. I'm gonna need you to chill. That was
the nice thing is, Maia, you have a team of friends who just want to see you and the setting thrive. So, you know, we're going to do the best we can to make sure that happens. But in the meantime, yes, don't wait for perfection. It doesn't exist and no one will see it. So
I know.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like a month ago, I was just like, all right, this is the last update I need to do for a long time. I feel like everything's in place. And then the OGL happened and I was like, all right, here we go again. I've been like working on it ever since to just make sure that I don't have any language that can be misconstrued, and like just rethinking actions and things like that to be like, all right, you know what? I'm not being associated with you. I want anything to do with what you're doing. I'm gonna do my own thing and it'll be original. And I am trying to like, because you know, every time we create something, we are influenced by the thing.
Of course.
Oftentimes subtly. Like you don't even know that like the influence is like kind of gotten into your work until you look at it much later. And so I've been going through with it like fine-tooth comb, being like, oh shit, I had bonus actions in there. Nah, I can't have that.
Yeah, like those things can't really be trademarked, but I totally understand like where you're going with that, and the idea of like we're gonna make this fully separate, like, no ties to, well, as much as you can, of course, as especially as you're saying, like I don't think there's anything that's ever been creative that hasn't at least been influenced in some way by something else, and that's just how creativity works. You know, like that's in almost all creative, you know, whatever outputs you can think of. Someone is always influenced by another. And good night, Vogley. Thanks for dropping by. Okay, so well, I was asking you about challenges, and then we started talking about kind of like, you know, making sure that you ignore your perfectionist habits.
Yeah, so aside from that, I would say mechanically speaking, the biggest challenge I'm facing right now is reinventing the whole action system. Everything I tend to do revolves around like making it more accessible and easier to get into for new players without doing so to the point where it's just like a shallow system. And that's a very difficult balance to kind of set in. So I'm always looking at ways to do that. Even when it comes to the organization of the guides, as much as I love like a lot of the contemporaries out there, it cannot be denied that half the time when I want to make a new character, I find myself skipping from page 15 all the way to 86 and then back up to 12 and then back to like 385. And then I'm just like, we can't do this.
Yeah.
There has to be like a guide that gets you through.
I don't know if you can though, right? Like, because the thing is with like any character, I know I bless you for trying, my child, but like I think so many times it depends on the person, right? Like,
yeah,
I know for me sometimes I like, weirdly enough, I kind of like the idea of like getting the character, like whatever personality traits or something down in my head before I even start with like this class and this that. So like in any rule book they're not going to be like, what's your character's favorite apple or something, you know? Like it's kind of hard to tailor that to be a, like, if you go from page this to that, you won't have to jump at all, just because, you know, different people are going to want to focus on different things, I guess, depending on what they're looking for.
That's why I separated them. So I'll have the campaign setting guide kind of separate from the mechanical one. So it's like, you go through the campaign stuff and you're already like, you have what you kind of want your character to be like from a conceptual standpoint. You know where they're from, you know what they're into, you know, like blah, blah, blah. And then you finally get over to the mechanical part and it's just like half of the stuff is already filled out because you went through the campaign guide already. So it's just like checking off the list. Yeah, I go with this, I go with this. They're from here, they're from this, they're this origin, blah, blah, blah. And then when you get to the like talents and classes and stuff like that, then it's like, all right, now I have to think about it a little more. And in the beginning, I was always with people when they were going through that process of creating a character to like guide them through it. But eventually, Vogel made me realize you're not going to be able to do that with people that don't know you. So
yeah, right. Exactly.
Like, all right, I need to like create this guide to walk them through the process like I would if I were on a call with them.
Yeah.
And so that's what I started doing.
Yeah, great. And again, that's the beauty of having people being able to kind of like play test things. And Vogel, I know you left, but thank you for, you know, helping her out. And you know,
not just Vogel, but shout out to Ninners, Iris, Faith, Ribbon, if you're here. Heck, anybody I've ever play tested with, if you're here, thank you from the bottom of my heart, sincerely, because everything you have like told me when it came to feedback is why the setting is as far ahead as it is and why it's as advanced as it is. Because I've always had that information to take in and then be like, okay, I know what to fix now. I know what to improve on. And there were a lot of times where I'd be somewhat reluctant to change a thing that was suggested, but just give me a day to like ruminate.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm gonna change. Yeah, they're right.
I think that's healthy, you know, like it's also like, this is your baby, right? Like you've been working on this for so long and it's just, how does that not like kind of like, no, I shouldn't change it. I know what's best for my baby. Wait, all right, that's a good point.
Nah, I can't. Like I said, if I do that, it's probably for a day at max. Because
I know,
Oh, that's just me being prideful. Maybe I should not do that. All right, let's fix the thing.
Yeah, and you're great about that too. It is definitely a good sign from a creator, you know, that you are open to not only suggestions, but, you know, actively making changes for that. So all good stuff. All right, I'm going to move on to my next question, which is kind of less of a question, but more of just like the general feeling of the style, I guess, of the setting, whether that be through the rules or maybe even like storyline and such. Do you find it being sort of a little more restrictive with rules? Or do you find it being kind of like more of a rule of cool or like a very looseness to the rules? Is that something that is kind of encouraged in this kind of game? Or do you find that if anyone has an answer or a question, you can come up with that answer on some page? For example, if one of your players is like, what's the square footage of your city? Would you some kind of like crazy details? Because
I have occasionally had the impulse to like overdo the amount of information that I give.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the setting itself. But eventually I kind of reached the point of like less is more, and also I am not infinitely knowledgeable on everything. So if I try to like what is the square footage of the city? How many people live here? I would be stuck there forever. I have shelved all of the like minutiae and things like that, like things that wouldn't directly affect players that much, to just like that could be explored in the future. Maybe I'll talk to like a developer or something, or like an architect to like really specify things for the people that love that. But for now, I just need to like make a thing that and let people like have their imagination just like do the work.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, it says it's a big city. What does that mean to you? There you go. Obviously, there will be representational art and a lot of questions and, well, not questions, but a lot of descriptors and things like that. What I've done for every locale is like give a description of it and a lot of the cool things you may find there. But I don't go so far as to be like, it's going to take you 2.5 hours to reach Ogilvy Station.
Exactly.
Why do you need to go that far?
No, I don't think you need to. And I like the idea of that like kind of creative flow as well. Like like Joe was saying, those are easy questions. Square footage is big. Population, a lot.
That's great.
This is true. Letting the viewer fill in the blanks always leads to a win. I super agree. Because in their mind, the finish is far closer to perfect than what you can aim for. Yeah, that is a really, really good point too. Because in that way, they can make it perfect for themselves.
Because I think if you get overly focused on like the minutiae, things like that, you kind of rob people of the ability to just imagine things and visualize them in other ways. So if you're trying to if you're reading about it and you visualize it, and then there's like some kind of sidebar that tells you all the stuff, it kind of strips away some of the fun of just like letting your mind color it. And when it comes to the mechanical side of it, a lot of the rules that I have there are more, in a lot of ways, just expressing what you can do in the world. It's less about limitations and more about like, hey, you want to know some cool shit you can do in this world?
Hey kids, you want to buy some freedom?
These rules will tell you how. We're like, or at the very least, limiting the amount of like things you can. Because one of the things I noticed over years of tabletop now on VTTs is I have been putting an emphasis on like making turns as short as possible. Because I noticed like a lot of the time we spend is actually calculating damage, saves, and things like that. It's like, all right, so 3 here, but they got a resistance here, but they don't resist this element, so we're gonna put the full there, and then that's 3 attacks, and then that one was a crit, and I was just like, all right, yo, like we're spending so much time mathing that we're not really spending a whole lot of time just immersed. And then, you know, earlier versions of the system, it is an action point based system, and some of the things you can do with bust it, and I realized that your turn can take forever because you're doing like 500 cool things. So yep. Kind of the opposite of like, I don't know, I need to make this one thing I do matter because my bonus actions suck. As opposed to like, oh my god, I have 25 cool things I can do. Which cool thing do I do? So I kind of wanted to like narrow that down a bit and just, you can still be cool, but at the same time, you know. Another thing that I kind of wanted the rules to do, separate skills from classes. Because a lot of times classes are strongly tied to skills, and it was just like, yeah, but what if you want a character that does this but does that in a different way? Like, just more freedom. So I want the skills to be their own thing, and the classes to just be like, what are you doing in a combat situation? Depending on the GM, you might never need to even worry about what your class does.
Cool.
Or the vice versa.
Great approach.
A lot of the skills are more like, what are you doing in the environment around you? Some of them can be used in combat, but like a lot of it is just like, if you're in an environment, and Vogel, again, a champ at this. The moment we started our first playtest, we went into like this dangerous forest area, and she immediately was just like, hey, can I gather mushrooms to like cook later?
That's Sparkly. I love
And I was
her.
like, yes. It's also
Sure.
yeah, like everybody's like gathering stuff. Like we were on a raft and it was sailing through like some caves and like a river and things like that, stream. And after we defeated these like piranha things, we're like jumping onto the raft and trying to electrocute people or harpoon them with like spear proboscis type things. Kid's character shredded most of them because they were super agile and led me to nerf agility in that setting. But there were still some fish left on the raft after the fight over. And Vogel was like, could I use that meat to cook up some stuff? Yes.
Yeah, it's that fun, like, out of combat stuff that you could do. Like, for example, though, if she was collecting mushrooms, like, is there a particular skill that you would call that, like, roll of this, or... What's it called?
Naturalism.
Naturalism. Oh,
yep.
There you go.
She was using it to forage from the environment and also detect poisonous plants and things like that. And in fact, I think she was the first one to detect these little strange mushroom people that were in the cave. They were just like hiding out amongst normal mushrooms, being still and silent. She was like, those mushrooms ain't right.
I'm wrong here.
Eventually they started talking to the party.
Oh, I think I've heard about that too, but I'm gonna save that for another question that I have later on. But yeah, I do remember you talking to me about like the way the classes kind of are, and that like they aren't necessarily called classes, they're called roles, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us a little bit more about kind of what's there? And I know the possibilities are seemingly endless just because of all the ways you can like mix and match the different skills or even fighting styles that you've been looking at. But tell us a little bit of what the like character creation looks like. And from this, I'm going to be asking more from like a maybe like a rules and like when you're at the table, like what to expect when you're playing that thing, not necessarily from a like my character is a shy and introvert kind of thing. More the metrics as opposed to the personality of the PCs.
Got this. All right, ask me that question again because you said a lot of words after that.
No. I know. I'm very sorry. But what can like let us know what the roles can kind of be. Like, what are the possibilities if someone chose a role? What might be an interesting combination that they can make? What is the freedom that they have in making these characters?
Okay, so currently I am in the process of rebalancing every role. Sparked by the OGL thing, but also me, being like, one of the biggest parts of my design philosophy is I don't want any character to be good at everything. That's what your squad is for. So I want gameplay to be a little more reliant on your teammates. Or even if you are playing a mobile style character. So in the current iteration that I am working on, there are 3 central things that are with every character. They have I gotta look at the mechanics because I'm changing names and stuff like that. And
she knows her stuff. Don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry. It's all good. These are working names, but every character has a resonance, and that means it is a buff that affects their ability to do certain things. So if you were to go, for example, with a destruction combat role, you would be able to like break the barriers that appear over your targets. So a lot of characters, especially Ibellans, walk around with like personal barriers to block incoming damage. It's up to a certain amount, and then it breaks. But they are really good at breaking those. And also, they tend to hit hard. It's in the name, destruction. And they have a responsibility, a trigger. That if you're in a certain guard stance, you can go ahead and counter. And theirs is like if they take a lot of damage, they can absorb some of that damage and then later release it as a vindictive blast. So if they take 300 damage and then their turn comes up, they can unleash that 300 damage on some poor soul.
Nope.
They've been like storing up and like getting real mad. But every class has a unique role that they play. And when it comes to the team portion of it, in the third level of every class, their resonance is something that becomes extendable to the rest of the team around them. So everybody is a little bit better at breaking barriers after a certain point. And depending on the class, it could be anything from adding celestial damage over time, or making everybody slightly faster, or a pulsing heal, status effects and attached to attacks and things like that. But there's a lot of things that every class offers their team, and at the same time, while they are solo viable, it's just like you're just better with more people.
Yeah. And that's also that's something that I've always loved. I love fucking teamwork in general, right? Like most of the games that I do play with, it's very often with other people to have that fun. And that's, I think, one of the best parts about a TTRPG, right? Like you're at a table with a bunch of your friends, so you should be better together, not necessarily because like I cast the things and he hits the things kind of situation, but instead across the board sort of buffing each other. So I really love that idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of abilities that kind of play off things that have already happened in the field. So like if you have like, let's say, a saboteur in your crew, and they land a bunch of, or even just like a provocateur, for example. There's a lot of debuffing types, but a provocateur is more about like just creating anarchy and driving. They're all about like the mental status ailments and things like that, slowing enemies, immobilizing them. The kind of stuff that you're just like, this doesn't do direct damage, but it does like screw up. It's a lot of crowd control.
Yeah, exactly.
And eventually it gets to the point where like when they crowd control enemies, they also buff their allies.
Yeah.
And there's another class that's about doing a lot of ailments and things like that, but they are about burning enemies down. The damage over time class. The saboteurs. And the thing is, the saboteur can run in, and if everybody has ailments on them, they can detonate those ailments and then go make everybody take all the damage that they would over time all at once. So those two classes could play off each other really, really well.
Synergy.
Yeah, but I wanted each class to have like a lot of synergy with others around them, and there are ways to like do that. And yeah, there's a lot of cohesion there.
Let's go. I love it.
Counters, some hard counters. So again, great to be on a team. So if there's somebody that's really good at like shutting the things you do down, you can rely on a teammate to be like, all right, take that guy out, please.
I can't do it. Could you please? But from a character creation standpoint, now you don't have to like run us down, I guess, like skills or talents that they could get. But can you give us a quick rundown, I guess, of what their roles are, like what their names are, I guess, and what kind of direction, like say as a player, like you were talking about the provocateur, and like that's the debuff dude, like that's what that guy's kind of speciality is. But yeah, I'd love to hear what they are and how many there are.
All right, so I'm going to run down a lot of the things here, but I'm going to try to do it as quickly as possible. First, you start with their origin. Like, what is your character? In D&D terms, I guess they call it species now. It will never be used to that because it makes them sound like aliens, but all right. Yeah. You're raised in old school RPG terms. There are adaptive origins, which can freely integrate themselves with like cybernetic augmentations or like genetic modifications, or they basically modify themselves to keep up with everything that's going on around them, or they might be a test subject or like a duplicate that was made in the lab somewhere. Or they might even be like a metallurgist, which is like a type of alchemist who like just, they're all knickknacks and putting together weird shit to see what happens. Or you can go with the synthetic origin, and this is where you get into like the AIs, like rogue AIs, pixel souls, nano souls. Whether they're created entities or entities that have like evolved within machines that commonly exist. Like an auto soul could be like a nursing robot that from their interactions with people, their AI evolves to the point at which they become people. So it's just,
oh shit.
Yeah.
Cool.
there's natural origins where if you're more into the fantasy side of things, there's Fae, there's Celastrians who Kit loves when I call them Treeple.
Triple.
There's Mycenians who are another one from Kit, Mushroom people, Mentalists, and there's all sorts of there. There's the transgenic origins, which are usually altered by their environment in some way. So if you live out in a waste, you might be a Scraplander or a Navir, kind of like a mutant type. Or perhaps you were altered in a lab, because a lot of weird science happens, and a lot of scientists are trying to like genetically modify people, like CRISPR, but taken to the extreme. Designer babies and all these things. So you have Zions. And then there's people exposed to paranormal events like Dream Touched and Transcendence who might be shapeshifters, or people who are in like have that paranormal and supernatural energy on tap. So those are your origins. Then when it comes down to skills, you have physical, social, technical, and crafting skills that you can select for your character. The typical physical stuff, acrobatics, athletics, like that. Considering changing the names because OGL, but reconnaissance stuff, etc. Social skills, obviously, I don't need to explain what those are. Technical skills, which usually involve interacting with the environment in some way directly, physically. So, like driving, engineering, physics, hacking, medicine, naturalism, and then your crafting skills, which you use to craft things.
You'll never guess this. You have to craft with the crafting.
Yeah, everybody can choose like background skill sets that like give them slight bonuses on a couple of their crafting or whatever skills. That was the first part. You come down. You kind of learn about the attributes in this setting, which are not what you would expect. It's not strength, dex, and they are different here, but also not so different that they're just like, oh, to get it.
They're not abstract. They're just different.
And it gets get down, and finally, the part that has your interest, we get to the combat roles and classifications. So there's, if I'm just going by word, destruction. You blow shit up. You're real good at blowing things up. Protection. Very tanky. There's taunts built in. There's a lot of barriers you can put on your allies. And you can do some pulls and things like that. Or pull yourself to enemies and knock them the hell out. There's interception, which is basically all about speed. You are the Flash. Just start over things and annihilate them. There's support, which is all about buffs and heals. They are kind of a buff bot, although I am taking steps to make sure that isn't all they do.
That they do, yeah.
Yeah. There's sabotage, which is basically about damage over time. Just burning shit down real fast.
Dots.
Execution. Used to be the stealth class, but since I'm decoupling classes from skills, they are more about like opening up opportunities to like perform criticals or like punching through barriers and things like that in defenses.
Like finding the weak spots almost.
Yeah, pretty much. Mayhem, one of my favorites, is about mayhem. So this is
you don't say.
that they're very interesting. They have a mix of AoEs, and if they kill a target or down a target, that usually allows them to like pretty much rush over and smack another target really quickly. Or if you try to hit them with status ailments, every now and then they can consume those status ailments and then buff themselves with that energy.
That's awesome.
So they're just a nightmare. Assault is another one of my favorite because I'll explain it if you'll know why. They're big on burst damage and also offensive and defensive elemental buffs. So this class is all about like, let's say, choose to give your allies the ability to ignite targets with their hits. And do that yourself. That's one part of it. And then the other part of it is they get to do a lot of sudden strikes, where it's just like if they're spending their resources, like a essence points, we call them in the system. You will burn through those extremely quickly, but at the same time, the exchange is you're doing a shit ton of damage in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, but you can run out essentially, so it's
Yeah,
not
you can run out of steam, and once you run out of essence points, you can recharge them, but they start costing you your max HP. So you're gonna lower that by like 10% every time you try to recharge your essence points. So you're getting
making a choice
here to keep up that crazy damage. Provocation, which is about crowd control, travel enhancements like haste, vault, flight, things like that. A lot of like buffs that prevent ailments from infecting your crew, and gravity attacks. So you're doing a lot of slows and immobilizes and things like that. And a new one that I'm working on, transference, where if an enemy has buffs, you can either shatter those buffs or detonate those buffs or steal those buffs and then debuff them at the same time.
Buff.
Yeah,
that's
pretty
awesome.
much. They're
very cool.
They're jerks.
They're jerks. Oh, that's cool though. That is awesome.
Quite a few of these classes are very adept at trolling.
I think it's because you made it that, you know, they are all proficient in trolling in some way.
Yeah.
If you don't know Maia very well, she is a very lovable troll.
Oh, really? To build upon that, try not to stretch too long, but it comes to attribute advancement, which is like every few levels you get a little better at one of your stats, you choose which one. Character complexities, where almost every character in this setting has something going on with them. You got artificially intelligent, genetically altered, cybernetically enhanced people everywhere. And you might have to deal with the after effects of radiation exposures, genetic mods, and things like that.
Yeah.
So you can probably have like think of it as like flaws and traits in D&D or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounded similar to like flaws of some kind.
Yeah, a little bit. But at the same time, it's kind of my way of saying, yo, over here, what we would call disabilities on Earth, this is what makes you more complex over there, because almost everybody's got that shit going on in some way. So
yeah, no, I love that choice of words instead, complexities, as opposed to like, you know, like a handicap or a disability or something that changes you otherwise. It's just a complexity instead.
Yeah. Over here, that's kind of the norm. You're not otherized for having those things about you. Because the people over here are so extra, like what they've changed to, what they've been altered to. They might have been even at some point, but they're not anymore.
Yeah.
And that comes with like obviously a lot of perks, but sometimes some flaws as well. Or they just have to try harder in certain areas. They're faced with unique challenges. If you're an AI, sometimes communicating with people isn't your strongest suit.
Yeah.
Yep. Or if you're like a scraplander who's like been around toxic waste all their life, your lifespan's probably going to be real short.
Yeah.
It's
interesting that like these are flaws, of course, but they're almost like genetic flaws as opposed to like a personality flaw where it's like I just can't let an argument go. Instead, it's like I was just born or made to be like this, and it's just something I have to deal with. Which I also kind of appreciate, just because, again, I think flaws are really interesting, not only for the players, but also for the situations that they can get into. And again, as you're mentioning with sort of the teamwork and why everyone works better together, it gives the opportunity for someone who doesn't have something like that to shine, or for that to even be just like a interesting character quirk.
One of the coolest ones is it's the paranormal one, complexity, where a character has to roll 1d100 at the start of each day. If the outcome is 20 or lower, all their skill checks for that day must be rolled under pressure. Kind of like disadvantage, but not.
I'm gonna roll 100 right now in chat and see if I rolled a 74. How did I do?
Okay, great. But if they roll 20 or lower, they're pretty much going to be haunted by malevolent spectral, mental, or digital entities for the rest of that day.
No.
But if they roll 80 or higher,
haunted.
Yeah, pretty much. If they roll an 80 or higher, those entities are benign. And so you'll get to roll your skill checks brilliantly, or
they'll
closest
help you
on
out.
is at advantage. So it's
Yeah.
work. Every day you're rolling that D100 just to see what your day is going to be like.
That's awesome. Yeah. Is that for like a very specific complexity that, say, is restrained to one origin? Or
anybody could have it. It does make more sense for some origins, like the Dream Touched, but anybody could be part of a paranormal event. I mean, if you're around like a mechacorp that does shady ass experiments trying to get in touch with other realities, it might happen to you. If there's an astral eclipse, which is a thing that does happen in a setting, you could have like an event there that, you know, exposes you to this. The interesting thing is, anybody could technically have this.
That is awesome. I love that. I love that very much.
I will say that if a character is spotted, or like if they're having this stuff happen around them, somebody who's proficient with like exotic elements, and I'll get into that later, but they'll probably be able to see what's haunting them and be like, oh shit.
Hello.
You're not just talking outside of your mouth. Okay.
That's awesome. I love
moving on, we have augmentations. And I'll just read the names of them because then you can just draw conclusions. Cybernetic upgrades, genetic modifications, natural transformations, and prosthetic innovations. Depending on your origin, you'll be able to use different types of these things. Like somebody who's synthetic probably isn't going to be rocking genetic modifications with genes.
Right. That makes sense.
Whereas, you know, somebody who is like a super mutant probably isn't going to be able to accept cybernetic upgrades. Because their body is, you know, always doing shit. Just like stuff right out.
Scientific term is doing shit.
Yeah. From there, you would pick your talents, which are kind of like feats. Your combat style. Here I tried to be a little more diverse with combat styles. So your usual, like, you know, you can get better at dual wielding weapons and things like that, or mauling people with, like, you know, heavier weapons and things like that. But there's also like a sentinel style where you excel at like pretty much blocking and countering damage, or, you know, intercepting damage when it would hit your allies. You can get better at blowing up AoEs.
Oh, cool. Detonating. Yeah. That's awesome.
Or you could even take a grappler combat style and just suplex people. Leonard's one of our playtesters. Literally, I remember he grabbed a target and then used his jet boots to go super high into the sky and then did like a drop to bring him down and deal extra damage on him. Like, there's a lot of things you can do with that. You can, when you're grappling, take somebody and use them as a shield. So incoming projectiles, you can throw them, or, you know, you can just put them in the holds or suplex them, as Ninners always likes to do.
Of course, Ninners is always trying to suplex people. If he gets the opportunity, he's going to take it.
Damn right.
Yeah, there you go. We're gonna train. The fucking Final Fantasy suplex is still the best in the world. Suplex or train. That's amazing. Never underestimate the human shield. 100%. 100%. Oh god.
But yeah, you can do a lot of crazy stuff.
A lot of
the rest of that is just choosing out equipment and what kind of elements you want your character to be proficient in. I will say that there are several types of elements. There's the physical stuff, blast, slash, pierce, crush. There's core elements like heat, cold, electricity. Primal, like sonic, wind, stone, water. Going down to the hazardous stuff like antimatter, radiation, viruses, and plasma. Supernatural, like stigmata, runic, dream, nightmare. You can really mess with people or like brand them so that they're taking more damage, or you can seal them so that their concentration is ruined. There's interstellar. You can mess around with gravity and like solar light and lunar light and just all sorts of nonsense. And then down to the exotic stuff I mentioned before, where you're dipping into psionics and telekinetics, and dousing people in ectoplasm so they'll be haunted, or astral elements, which makes everything crazy.
Yeah, I think the thing that this like style of character building seems to just breed is just almost like limitless creativity. You know, like you can pick out things that you really, really like, or the idea that if you have an idea that's like really out there, it almost seems like how could you not attain it with this system? You know, like there's a lot of different things that you can do, and it's very, very cool.
That was actually a lot of the fun of playtesting, was like when people would approach me with concepts sometimes, and they would be like really reluctant to say what the concept is because they didn't think they would be able to do that. They'd be like, yeah, so my idea was blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, yeah, no, that's cool. You can do that. What? Holy shit,
awesome.
I can do that? And I was like,
exactly. Yeah, I made a system where you could just come up with some crackpot idea and you can do it. And that's awesome. And I love that.
What did people have? Oh, hi there, Ninners.
Yeah, Ninners told us not to tell on him though because he's in the sweaties with Flanny.
Oh, I see.
Oh my god. But anyway, did you have any more you wanted to add to the lowdown, or?
I'm gonna hold the rest for a second and let you see what you can ask.
No worries. This is kind of a little more sort of overview questions now that we've gotten into sort of like some of the details of like what you could do with the characters and such. But in terms of sort of like the general lore and the general setting as a living, breathing setting, what would you say the moods kind of are, I guess, or like what they kind of span? Do you find yourself in a sort of a gloomy cyberpunky thing, or is it leaning into sort of a more optimistic? Does it very much depend on where you are? You know, like is one place like this is great and the other is like we're suffering every day? What would you say about sort of the different moods that you can find in the setting, or different like themes, I guess?
Definitely more toward the latter. So first off, your origin does play kind of a role in how you might even perceive the world around you in the first place. If you are a virtual soul and you are information and you're always connected to like 50 billion things going on, you probably have a raging attention deficit. It's complex. But
yeah.
Versus a person who is a mentalist who is pretty much training to be a monk and like mastering mind over body and things like that, they'll perceive like the environment very differently because they're not trying to rely on a lot of technology and things like that. But beyond that, there is the region you come up in. Usually there's a lot of independent city states. Let's get away from nationalism. It's bad.
For many reasons, we're avoiding that.
So there's a lot of independent city states. Some of them have formed alliances. Two of the biggest ones are Meridia and Hadari. One of them, Meridia, is, from a first glance, a solar punk utopia. You bring your characters up there, and they're probably going to approach the world with a sort of Star Trek-y optimism.
Okay.
It's just like they're going out. They do get themselves involved in a lot of danger, but most of it is like them actually going to regions that are in danger and trying to solve problems. So if they're going out to the Midland forests and things like that, there's probably predators running amok, like literal raptors and shit, ripping people apart.
I love that shit. Let's go.
There may be an incident that happened at a research outpost and they're trying to either get critical supplies to them or eradicate the threat that's pretty much eviscerating everyone. However, if you start in Hadari, which is a cyberpunk dystopia, a lot of those stories will revolve around you trying to survive those streets. Maybe you're in a lost district and there's a gang war, or mafias are making moves on each other, or even mega corporations have put down a new drug that is being tested on the populace through the syndicates. Gotta absolve the plane. You can't just be blatant with that. Maybe there's a new drug going around and it's causing all sorts of havoc and you're trying to get to the bottom of it, maybe stop it. depends on like how powered you want your campaign to be. It could just be trying to survive in the mean streets, or you could be a mercenary who's getting involved in some like heists, like raiding buildings for prototype technology and things like that. You know, it could be any sort of thing. If you come up in the Steel Carnival, it's just a anarchic, post-apocalyptic, heavy metal dream. It's just all sorts of madness going on. There's all sorts of regions that you can start your character in, and those usually determine what the general mood of the campaign will be. And of course, you always go to other regions. So things might shift up between adventures. You know, you might be this sort of optimistic, like, I'm just doing patrols and making sure everybody's okay when you're with the freelancers. But eventually, if you're led into Hadari, you're like, holy shit, this is bleak.
Yeah. So it again, it kind of does lend itself to that living, breathing world, and the idea that like things are different depending on where you are, and it'll likely very much influence whatever character comes out of there or visits there. It's like, this is different, or this is how I know things to be. So that's awesome.
Yeah. You might think you're in the right all the time. You go to another place and you're like, oh, I can see how we're wrong.
Yeah. And that's always awesome and super fun. So I love that openness to it.
Not to mention there are factions affiliated with each region. And your ties to them might also affect how people perceive you or how you get along with others.
Of course.
Like, you could say freelancers and mercenaries definitely have a rivalry because Meridia and Hadari have an intense rivalry. You have Solarpunk versus Cyberpunk. It's like they obviously don't get along. Or you could be a character, and actually Kit has this, from the Laurel Enclave, which is pretty much described as a forest paradise. And these people are trying to pretty much get folks to coexist with nature instead of trying to dominate over it. So if you bring somebody from that region into Hadari, don't turn out to be an eco-terrorist or some shit. Like,
yeah,
you know?
They're not going to adjust real good.
No, it's gonna be rough.
Yeah, I can see that very clearly, and that is awesome. All right, I'm going to kind of talk about some of the playtests that you have had the pleasure of running. Unfortunately, my schedule's all over the place, so I haven't been able to hop in on any of yours. But what were some memorable moments, especially as like a game creator? You know, being able to kind of like, oh, that worked really well, or oh no, that's hilariously broken. Just kind of moments where like you either felt very rewarded or like I need to fix that.
Okay, well, with the first play test we did, it was a group of folks that came out of Meridia and were like working with the freelancers to reach an outpost and solve problems on the borders of the Emerald Labyrinth, which is, to sum it up real fast, dangerous man-eating forest place where the plants will pretty much evolve to consume plastic, metal, and everything. And if you are found wanting, the forest will either try to get you to leave or shred you, and you are fertilizer. So there's an outpost on the outside of that, and there's some very intense problems that were spreading very fast. And as the crew was like working their way over to that base, Vogel's character hates technology, and one of the NPCs that was helping them was a robot. So instantly clashing all the time, just arguing with each other, like frequently. I loved it.
That's awesome.
And like half the time that NPC was just like, you were fucking nut. And Vogel, like her character would like have this sort of, a lot of the characters that run around, especially freelancers, since they have a lot of high tech, typically would have visors and things like that would like give them heads up displays and things like that. But Vogel's character was so weird, but, like whenever the heads up display trigger, she was like, it was like swatting at it. And like they were just like, what the hell is wrong with you? They're a robot. They don't know what it's like to not have that, you know?
Right, exactly. Like, what is your deal? This is normal.
But as they went further along, they had a lot of fights. one of them was like with this tribe of local primates, very intelligent, like tribe of great apes, and actually wolves and things like that. They were hanging out with them. They were actually trying to fight off the same threat, but they got infected by it and were being driven mad, mutated, and they became a danger to the environment and unfortunately had to be stopped. But as they were going down, their leader had a lucid moment and began talking to the party, and tried to share what he could about how he tried to stop it and how they went wrong before he requested that they finish the job, because he knew he was going to lose himself completely and be even worse. So that was actually a very sad moment.
I was gonna say, that's some dark shit, Maya. You
It
coming
was.
up for the darkest campaign?
Yo,
Should we get you in the running?
Doing that, and it was crazy because the boss fight was terrifying. It had an ability called Last Resort, where if your HP falls below 0, your character can keep fighting for 1 turn, but they're also super buffed and you can't really do status ailments or anything. You pretty much have to survive. But the party didn't know that until it triggered. So they were just fighting this unstoppable. But it was like, oh, I won't die. Hit him with it's shredding.
I'm pretty sure it should be dead. What's happening?
And then eventually, that timer ran out and it did collapse. But they were just like, and that's when it started to like try to talk to them and things like that. And they're just like, bro, I don't trust this. I don't know, am I killing you? We can't really get back up.
It's talking. Is it gonna come up and beat our asses again, or are we alright?
We can't take another one like that.
That's awesome.
But as it was talking, they were just like, really getting gravity on the situation, understanding what went wrong and why this has to be stopped. And when I was role playing that character, I actually felt real sad. Like I didn't really show it during the session, but after the session was over, it's like, oh shit, I gotta sit down. That was.
Woo!
Oh man, that was rough.
Yeah.
And then as they continued on the journey, they had the fishing incident, in which the robot, their NPC buddy, after they sushi'd those monsters that attacked them on the raft, which they made out of a mushroom cap, that I did not see coming. That was great.
Right. Love player ingenuity, right?
Yeah, they made a raft out of a mushroom cap, and we renamed the campaign to the Shiitake Solution for that reason.
Yep. I remember that.
But after they sushi'd the fish, Vago's character wanted to cook them, and the NPC was just like, they're gonna. This is a forest full of predator monsters. They're gonna smell everything you do. Oh, I hate you. But they met a little crew of mushroom people who were just inspired by me seeing art of a little plushy mushroom creature online. I was like, what if they met something like this? So they went into a cave to like seek refuge from the rain. Downpour is pretty intense. And as they're in the cave, Vogel's character is just like looking around. I'm noticing I'm mentioning Vogel's character a lot.
Yeah, she's a standout apparently.
Yeah, she was going ham in this campaign. Like,
That's awesome.
I didn't know she could throw down like this, but she was amazing in this one. I think having her play curmudgeonly characters is the way to go. This anti-tech, fey, ridiculous people.
Yeah.
She's
awesome.
is amazing with this. But she spotted the mushrooms that ain't right. Like, that mushroom ain't right. And Kit's character, Ever Curious, approached the mushrooms that wasn't right. And they began talking to them. And it turned into a whole thing of like the mushroom people explaining. First off, they were like a foot tall, 2 feet tall, very tiny and adorable. Explaining that, they were being asked like common questions that humans would ask each other, but not mushroom people.
Yeah,
How long have you guys been around? And it's just like, it's a great question. Well,
we don't have
the the oldest among us hasn't been eaten 16 times.
That's how we judge age.
Yes, times you have escaped
awesome.
not being eaten by other forest creatures. That was age for them.
That's amazing. So
So,
if you have one really bad day, you're now the oldest in the village.
yes,
That's awesome.
it was funny because the one that had been eaten was like this very angry elder guy. who's running around. And Kit's character, because they kept incessantly asking questions, pissed off the old guy, and because he was a tiny mushroom person with 2 feet height and is a mushroom, he tried to like hit Kit's character in the knees with a cane, but did like no damage. Keep asking all these stupid ass questions, I'm gonna break you.
It's like, this is
anything.
you're hitting me with a toothpick, sir. It is doing nothing.
Yeah, but they had a lot of fun with that character. They were actually being protected by some drones that were reprogrammed from long range by people in the research station that was under attack. They were actually trying to research these little mushroom folk, but when everything went to shit, that one of the scientists reprogrammed their drone to keep an eye on them and ward off predators and things like that. Unfortunately, that drone was lost because the inevitable happened, predators. And so the crew, after, I guess, getting to know the mushroom people, decided to help them not get eaten one more time.
Yeah.
And went to go locate the drone. And, you know, there was a lot of fun hijinks with that. Some of my favorite characters to ever play, because I played all the mushroom people. It was like 6 of them. So
That is adorable, and I love it. I remember hearing about it, but that sounds amazing. I actually wanted to ask, because Virgil said the speed moment was fun hearing about. Do you know what he's referring to? The speed moment? Yeah. I wasn't sure if there was like a story with like someone with incredible speed or something.
Oh, yes, Kit's character.
Okay.
They built their character in an older version of Ibellan Nights, obviously playtesting, and they pretty much just went all in on agility, and it got to the point where this character just could not be hit, but was also always hitting, and so they were just like shredding everything in sight. And the point I knew where we were at, the point of no return, was, as usual, Ninners rolls low.
Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Ninners rolled low, and then he used some of the mechanics that were there in place to like help low rollers kind of bring it back.
Okay, yeah.
So he spent a lot of resources to like make sure he got a hit in on his turn, even though he was missing everything left and right.
Yeah.
And then Kit turns around the next turn, and with his character, rolls a critical failure. And then there are mechanics where you can kind of rebound from that. So you roll a crit fail, you can roll a D100, and if you get above a 50, it turns into a comical failure. Where it's like, you can roll again to try to maybe hit.
Yeah.
If you do, you'll do diminished damage. But you'll still manage to hit, and it will be some comical, stupid way to do it. So Kit's weapon of choice were these kunai gloves, where you can flash print things to throw at your targets or hit targets with. So usually it takes the form of like swords and things like that, or javelins, or that type of thing. Because it was a comical failure, Kit threw a sharpened banana at the target.
Oh my god.
And somehow still did more damage than Ninners.
Then it was like, all right, I gotta adjust some stuff.
The moment that happened, I was just like, how the fuck did you do this? I was like, you throw a sharpened banana at the target. That's not gonna hit. It hits. All right. Cool.
Good, great.
I got to fix you. You are so broken. You hit once in this fight, and every attack you have done has hit them. Even your crit fail. It's just, all right.
Yeah, that is hilarious. I love it.
Yeah, that led to an overhaul of the attribute system. So that it is significantly better balanced, and you can't just like pick one thing and like run the world. Oh hey Voggy, you came back after we referenced you like 200 times and how awesome you were in the playtest.
Yeah, we were shouting praises in your direction. But we are kind of coming up towards the end of the interview of the chat. I have 3 more questions for you, and we'll get through those. And then, as per usual, we're probably going to raid. So I will probably do my usual, which is forget to look it up and then have to stall and look it up while we're doing it. So I'm going to go for the next question, though, which is kind of, I know this is going to be very difficult for you, but if you need a second to get your brain right, you'd let me know. If you had to give an elevator pitch for why someone should try your system, or why they should at least play test it, maybe like get some feedback, from them, what would you say to such a person? What is your elevator pitch to give it a shot?
Yeah, you're right. You are the worst for this.
I was like, I'm gonna say this and she's gonna get mad at me. I know what's gonna happen here.
I would say because it is a deeply original setting with a ton of original lore, a very well thought out world, tons of mechanics that are more focused on you envisioning a character and then having fun, as opposed to like pre-existing things that you work within to try to make something happen. That's the very quick version of it. That's
I like it. I think that is absolutely great. No, I love it very, very much. And for you as a creator of Ibellan Nights, we kind of talked about this a little bit in the question of, like what challenges you've encountered and what you expect to face later on. But in your sort of process at the moment, what are the next steps for you and this setting? Not necessarily to completion, but just sort of like, what do you see yourself probably tackling in the next, like, up to 6 months or so?
I am currently in the process of revising the way classes work and making that more accessible. It used to be a multi-classing system, which every character picked dual roles. But I'm kind of moving that around a bit because I'm changing the way they work, and each class itself does more cool shit. So I'm just kind of doing an overhaul of that. The action economy is something I want to be very smooth and also cinematic. So I want people to get in. And again, I've always been like, turns take too long. Let's make it easier to get through turns and like move things along. And I came to this conclusion even with my own setting after we did a boss fight. And I was just like, I'm going to do something different for me. I'm going to make the tankiest fucking tank I can make. And that fight had like 20 turns. It was so long.
Wow. Yeah.
Because it was a boss. First off, I made like a giant mech enemy, and it had multiple parts. And for the first couple of rounds of that fight, my poor playtesters were not targeting the correct parts. So this boss was just like super tanking and also dishing out a ton of damage, and also missing with his flamethrower every round, which made me feel bad.
the GM flashbacks of the
supposed to be real threatening, and the flamethrower never lands. What is this?
I feel that so hard.
But it was a multi-part tank boss, and it took so long to kill it that I was just like, you know what? Once they break this last part, I'm just gonna be like fast forwarding it to the end of the fight. Because I don't want to sit here and wait for all this, and I know they don't. So I had to do some rebalances around that. What I'm trying to do is, when it comes to enemy design, is let there be, the regular enemies that you deal with. Raptors in the jungle. All sorts of madness like that. But also multi-part bosses is something that I have included. And keep tweaking and tailoring so that it isn't too OP. But that was one of the big multi-part bosses, and I realized that if you make a tanky one, that can be a slog. Afterwards, I had to go through and like nerf everything. Like when it came to HP, it's just like, y'all clearly have too much. This is nuts. I lost track of the question. I got sidetracked. I'm sorry.
You're good. It was next steps, essentially. Like in the next few months, you find yourself
revising the action system. Firstly, to make it more accessible and more smoothly running, and to make it even more original than it already is, and further differentiate it from everything you can find in the OGL that they're trying to get rid of. But that is the more immediate when it comes to the mechanics. When it comes to the lore, I think the lore is great right now.
It's in a good spot.
I don't really have anything I need to revise.
Yeah,
For
and
one,
that's part of the importance of your play testers right now, is because, like, you know, setting is good. You need to find out where the numbers are, or, you know, abilities and such need to be kind of tweaked.
yeah, the lore at this point is literally at the point where I don't feel the need to revise anything until we're in playtesting a locale and things
Right.
go up. But
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
now, it's great. When we were doing the second playtest and we started in the Steel Carnival region, which, dear God, if I could talk about what happened there.
Mm-hmm. Jeez.
Just absolute madness. There were a lot of things that happened there. I was just like, you're right, this doesn't make sense. I can revise this. So, for example, the Steel Carnival started as a repurposed theme park. And I was just like, if I want this to be a whole ass region, what if we took Disneyland and hit that with post-apocalyptica and had a bunch of like deranged people move in and just make a society
That's
is
just a
barely
society now.
like,
Very cool.
all sorts of wild hijinks going on in like a resort, like, you know how the Disneyland region is, where it's like there's a theme park, yes, but there's also the resort around it and like residential around it. I was like, yeah, all right, we're gonna do that. And like the people who operate the trains and things like that are people who like couldn't win in arenas and like get glory that way. So it's like, well, fuck, this is my job now. It's just like, and part of the fun part about that region is like, if you're in an arena down there, oftentimes the arenas will be in like a subway station or something that is still active. So
oh shit!
You can literally knock your enemy onto the train tracks, and then one of the train drivers is be like, "I don't care that you're there," and just
I got places to be.
You'll literally get punched into a train.
Oh my god, that is hilarious.
Yeah, but I wanted to have a lot of like, it's a very actiony. I will reference one of the things that happened. Simply because it is part of the flavor that has been added to the region.
Okay.
One of the characters in the playtesting crew part 2 is an autosol. Used to be a coffee machine. Somehow getting sentience. And for some reason, then it started to be a great idea to attach that to a robot he built. So, coffee machine, robot body. And this thing is just plugging corporate advertisements left and right. Dispensing all sorts of like weird beverages and things like that. So they're trying to get information on somebody who has gone missing that they have been hired to find. They locate somebody that might know something, and it turns out this guy's a drunk, and he's looking for something strong enough to really like, he's basically had a shitty day. And he's just like, man, I need something intense because I need to forget everything that just happened. He has the like 1,000-yard stare at everything. And they decide to give this man Everclear Black Label.
Oh my god.
This is what they came up with. I had nothing to do it. They give this man this truck a drink. And he
oh my god.
Blackout drunk. He gives them the information they want before he passes the fuck out. They leave him there on the sidewalk and go off to find who they're looking for. That man gets robbed.
Oh no.
Immediately after. Because he's just laying there unconscious in the Steel Carnival. Of course they robbed him. But the people who robbed him, one of the other characters in the party is a therapist. Or was a therapist. Meridia. So that character left her card with the drunk before they pass out. Just like, hey, you clearly have a lot going on. You need to get in contact. People like to contact me. The people that robbed him got the card, and just for a moment had like that moment, just like, we're out here robbing people that are unconscious. Maybe we need therapists. Maybe we should go visit this.
Oh my god. Just a moment of clarity there. Like, maybe we shouldn't.
So now, instead of having one client that is clearly an alcoholic, they have 4 clients, 3 of which robbed the alcohol. It's like ridiculous.
This is part of the reason why I need to get you, streaming some of these things, or at least recording them, because you have such great stories already, and I really doubt nobody else would want to see that or hear it. So we're getting there, I promise. But
Is it safe for Twitch?
for-
I don't know.
it's
The
fine.
second crew, I don't know.
Hey, look, worst comes to worst, you could just throw in your hat for the darkest campaign because we've been yelling at each other for it. So apparently you might be in the running. But anyway, what I kind of want to close off on is where can we find you? Where can we find your stuff? If someone was interested in being a playtester, where should they go?
Well, that's a great question.
Well,
obviously the easiest place to find me is here on Fuzka's channel because I'm literally here every week doing the D&Ds. When I'm not there, you can catch me on the Discord, the Ibellan Nights Discord. Fuz is doing the technical thing and plugging them. Thank you. I also have a Twitter, which Fuz is making me get used to.
yes, yes, 100%.
And a Patreon at Ibellan Nights. And that's where you pretty much find all of the materials that are currently in progress. I admit they look janky because I don't have every skill on the planet.
Yeah.
But I am
Of
trying
course.
to work on making a lot of this stuff more accessible, especially on mobile. But for now, yeah, those are the three main avenues you can find me at. I do have a link tree. Let me grab that.
Yeah, post that. Let's
Yeah,
go.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna
She's doing great stuff. See if you can be a part of it. Shank is just home cooked flavor. That is like the most wholesome way of looking at it. Oh my god.
Yeah.
We're just ending, Mark, unfortunately. We just finished our wonderful chat with Maia. She's just gonna plug some of her links in chat. And then we're gonna get to rating. And I know we rated them last night, but I think I'm gonna raid them again because on Guild Superior, because they're awesome. They're just super fun. But our boy Insomnia Knight is he's on that particular show right now, so we get to support two people while going over there, or actually multiple people because the way they run their adventures is really cool. So once you get your
What's going on here?
There it is. He's sorry he didn't make it in time, but we appreciate you being here.
Good. Oh, actually, before we raid,
Yeah,
I feel like we should at least answer one question that anybody that's been here might have had.
Sure. What's that?
I feel like we should do that.
What question?
Anybody over in the stream chat have any questions they would like to get answered or anything?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I was asking if they came up, but yes. And for closing statements, if anybody has one that they felt was not answered, you have an opportunity now. But yeah, I was trying to make sure if anyone had a question that they could ask, and I slipped them in. A quick summary. Do you want to give your elevator pitch a second time? Except this time a little bit about Mark. Key points. He had never heard about any of this setting at all. So let's see if we can get a 1 minute elevator pitch. Let's
Mark,
go,
you're
girl.
doing me dirty.
Hey, you opened up the floor. You opened up the floor.
I did this to myself. Right.
You did.
Ibellan Nights is a sci-fantasy tabletop setting that spans several genres, from solar punk to cyberpunk dystopia to post-apocalyptica. Even got a lot of fae, paranormal, super magical, and sometimes superhero elements thrown in. Depends on which society you're from and like what's happened to you in a lot of ways. Because certain societies love to experiment on their populace a lot. One of them actually refers to their capital city as the Grand Laboratory. So, of course, superheroes happen. God, where was I going with the rest of that? But we
talk
spent a
about
lot of today going over the rules and a lot of the mechanics, which is pretty much built to have like a very cinematic flow when it comes to combat, and when it comes to environment, a skill system that pretty much encourages you to like really interact with the environment because you're going to get a lot from that. And we've had a lot of memorable playtests. It was just, we're going to have a fight against nameless, faceless enemies, and report the results. No, I try to make whole ass campaigns. Like we go through that just to kind of test everything.
And I like the other part of the elevator pitch I asked you for before. Like, why would you suggest it? In terms of, like, why would a player enjoy their time in Ibellan Nights?
It's different. It is sci-fi in a lot of ways, but it's also fantasy in a lot of ways. There's a lot of paranormal and abnormal shit to interact with. It's on a super Earth, not a normal Earth. So a lot of the origins there are very, very out there. Not in the sense of like they're just overpowered and you can't get along with them or anything. It's more like there's a lot of strangeness to interact with and a lot of ways to like create a concept in your head, especially if you've gone through the lore and then turn around and be like, can I actually do this though? And the answer is almost guaranteed to be yes. So you're gonna have a good time creating the character, and there's a lot of interesting societies and factions and things like that to like flesh that out even more and create even more unique interactions. Character
Awesome.
Maybe. I like that.
Yeah, well, maybe one of these build with me's can be us playing with the character creation in Ibellan Nights, and we could advertise your stuff a little bit more, girl. Let's go.
And again, Vogel, absolute star when we did that protest, and she breathed so much life into that campaign, and it just cannot be understated. She was amazing.
We love you, Vogel. You're the bestest.
Literally, your character was super awesome, and I was just like, "Oh man, I hope we can get you to make another character like this at some point."
Yo, let me tell you, I asked Maia, I was like, "What are some memorable moments?" And I think like 5 out of the 7 she brought up were about you. So good job, Buckley. You're killing it out there. But yeah, we're gonna start signing off here. If anybody, of course, has any other questions, Maia is, of course, in our Discord, and she has her own Discord for this setting. Her Patreon was posted. Her Twitter is right beneath her portrait. So if you want to go there, you can check her out as well. Lots of different links and such that we can give you, because this is in progress, but we shall help her as she continues progressing, and it is amazing. Build with me available at the Foos Network Monday or Wednesdays. More after these messages. Thank you. But yes, thank you once again, everybody, for being here, for supporting our lovely, lovely Maia. We're going to continue to find ways to sneak her in, sometimes perhaps spontaneously, and sometimes perhaps planned, but we will see how that goes. And
thank you.
And thank you guys once again. We, like I said, are going to go raid Guild Superior, because they're super cool, and they have really, really cool people playing for them right now. So
wait,
let's go.
Again?
What'd you say?
I'm surprised they're streaming again. Yesterday was so intense. Like, why?
Yeah, well, the way they do it is like it's almost always a different like setting and team and everything else. Like the producer, I think, is the same, but otherwise it is otherwise different people doing it. But yeah, anyway, we're gonna go say hi to them. Make sure we show them love, and Insomnia is there, so make sure you show him love too. And thank you once again. Bye. Okay. We are